January 31st, 2013. A 21-year-old woman walks into an elevator at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She presses several buttons. Then she steps back out. She looks down the hallway. She hides beside the elevator door. And then she begins moving her hands as if she's talking to someone standing just outside the camera's view. Nobody is there. At least, nobody we can see. 4 minutes later, the elevator doors close, and Elisa Lam disappears. Elisa Lam was 21 years old. She was from Vancouver, Canada, and was traveling alone through California. She had been keeping in regular contact with her family throughout her trip. On January 26th, she checked into the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. The hotel was already infamous. Built in 1924, the Cecil had spent decades developing a disturbing reputation because of the number of deaths, suicides, murders, and other tragedies associated with the building. But Elisa wasn't there because of that reputation. She was simply a young traveler passing through Los Angeles, and for the first few days, everything appeared normal. Then January 31st arrived. Her family stopped hearing from her, and suddenly, she was missing. Her family reported her missing. Hotel employees searched the building. Police became involved. But there was a problem. The Cecil was enormous, hundreds of rooms, multiple floors, dozens of places where someone could disappear from view. And then investigators found something. Security footage from one of the hotel's elevators. The video was only a few minutes long, but it would eventually become one of the most infamous pieces of missing person footage on the internet. Before I get into the theories, if you want more deep dives like this, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. It lets me know you want more of these. The footage begins with Elisa entering the elevator. She walks toward the control panel and presses several buttons. Then she waits. Nothing happens. The elevator remains open. Elisa looks toward the hallway. Then she steps outside. She presses herself against the wall beside the elevator and waits. This is where the footage becomes difficult to interpret, because she isn't simply standing there. She repeatedly looks toward the hallway, then back toward the elevator, then toward the hallway again, as if she's waiting for someone. But no one appears. She suddenly moves back into the elevator, then immediately steps out again. Her hands begin moving. Her fingers move rapidly in front of her. Some people interpreted the movements as counting. Others thought she was gesturing towards someone. Then she moves farther into the hallway. Her body language becomes increasingly animated. She appears to be communicating with something, or someone, outside the camera's view. But there is an important detail. The camera doesn't show the entire hallway. It only shows the area directly in front of the elevator. So when Elisa looks toward the side, we don't know what she's looking at. We only know what the camera sees, and what it sees is an empty hallway. Eventually, Elisa walks away. The elevator doors close, and that is the last confirmed footage of her alive. And this is where the internet became obsessed, because everyone wanted to answer one question. Who was Elisa talking to? Some people believe someone was standing just outside the camera's frame. Others believe she was being followed. Some thought the footage showed evidence of paranormal activity. And eventually, one theory became particularly popular: the elevator game. But there's a problem. There is no established evidence that Elisa Lam was playing the elevator game. The connection was made later, mostly because some of her movements appeared to resemble descriptions of the internet ritual. And that's an important distinction, because this case became so famous that fact and speculation eventually became almost impossible to separate. For 19 days, Elisa remained missing. Then hotel guests began complaining about something strange: the water. They reported low water pressure. Some complained about the taste. Maintenance worker Santiago Lopez was sent to inspect the hotel's rooftop water tanks, and inside one of them, he discovered Elisa's body. She had been missing for nearly 3 weeks, and suddenly, the case became even more disturbing, because now investigators had to answer a much bigger question. How did she get onto the roof? And how did she end up inside the water tank? Elisa's death was eventually ruled an accidental drowning. The coroner also noted her bipolar disorder as a significant factor. There was no evidence establishing that another person had killed her. No confirmed murderer. No proven conspiracy. No paranormal explanation. but the case didn't feel finished to people watching from the outside, because several details seemed strange. The roof wasn't an ordinary guest area. The water tank wasn't an obvious place for someone to enter. And the question of how Elisa reached the tank became one of the biggest sources of speculation surrounding the case. But this is where we have to separate what is known from what the internet believes happened. One of the most repeated claims online is that Elisa couldn't possibly have reached the roof because access was locked. But the actual situation was more complicated than that. There were multiple routes and security considerations around the hotel's roof and fire escape. And the existence of locked access doesn't automatically prove that nobody could have reached the area. At the same time, that doesn't answer every question either. Because even if Elisa reached the roof herself, we still have to explain why she went there, why the water tank, and exactly how she entered it. Those questions helped transform a tragic death into an internet mystery. And then came the theories. The first major theory was murder. The Cecil Hotel had a history that made this theory especially easy to believe. Serial killer Richard Ramirez had stayed there. Jack Unterweger had also stayed there. The building had been associated with numerous violent and tragic incidents, so people naturally wondered, could someone have followed Elisa? Could someone have killed her and somehow placed her inside the tank? But there was a major problem. Investigators didn't find evidence supporting a homicide. The coroner did not identify traumatic injuries consistent with murder, and no killer was ever established. So while foul play became one of the most popular theories online, it remained a theory, not a conclusion. Then there was the theory that Elisa was performing the so-called elevator game. According to the internet legend, a person enters an elevator and presses a specific sequence of floors. Follow the sequence correctly, and supposedly something supernatural happens. People looked at Elisa's behavior. The buttons, the waiting, the strange movements, the apparent conversation, and suddenly, the footage seemed to fit the story. But again, there is no reliable evidence that Elisa knew about the elevator game. No confirmed search history, no message from Elisa explaining it, no witness saying she was attempting it. The theory exists because people connected two strange things together. And sometimes, that's enough for the internet to turn speculation into mythology. There is another explanation, and it's far less supernatural. Elisa had bipolar disorder. Her behavior in the elevator may have been connected to a severe episode. The hiding, the gestures, the apparent conversation, the unpredictable movements. What looks terrifying when viewed without context could have been a person experiencing a medical crisis. That explanation doesn't make the footage less disturbing. It makes it more tragic, because perhaps there was never anything supernatural inside that hallway. Perhaps Elisa was experiencing something entirely real to her, something nobody else could see. And while the internet was searching for ghosts, killers, and secret rituals, the simplest explanation may have been a young woman experiencing a severe mental health crisis. But even when you accept the official conclusion, the case still leaves uncomfortable questions. What exactly was Elisa reacting to in the elevator? Why did she go to the roof? Why did she enter the water tank? And what happened during the hours between the elevator footage and her disappearance? We may never know, because the elevator camera captured only a few minutes, not the entire night, not her thoughts, not what she saw, just a fragment. 4 minutes of a much larger story. And maybe that's why the footage became so terrifying. Not because it proved something paranormal, but because we're watching a real person in a moment we don't understand, knowing that something terrible is about to happen. Elisa Lam wasn't a fictional character. She wasn't an internet ghost story. She was a 21-year-old woman who traveled to Los Angeles and never made it home. The elevator footage gave the world 4 minutes of her final confirmed movements, and millions of people spent years trying to explain them. Maybe she was being followed. Maybe she was experiencing a severe episode. Maybe there are details we'll never know. But one thing is certain. The footage doesn't show us a ghost. It shows us something much more unsettling. A person in distress and a camera that recorded it without ever telling us why. Perhaps that's the real mystery of Elisa Lam. Not what was inside that elevator, but what happened after the doors closed.